Welcome to The Truth in His Heart. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I'm in conversation with an editor and cinematographer with a degree from Micah. She co-produced Do Whatever You Want All the Time, the Baltimore music scene, 2005 to 2020, so 2020. She currently works as a senior editor and producer at a Baltimore-based production company. Please welcome Julia Golonka. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for, you're going to be indulging all of these questions and things and observations that I have. So thank you for accepting this invitation. So I like to start off with kind of like a softball kind of question, like, hey man, tell me about growing up and, some of those early experiences with art. So before we get too deep into that, let's talk about that a little bit. Some of those, like that, some of that childhood creativity and some of those early experiences you've had with maybe film or art.
Yeah, I was always very interested in storytelling, and I've always had this very imaginative universe happening in my head. So I was never really bored because there was always just something that I was coming up with. Early on in elementary school, I discovered that I liked writing, and I was writing a lot of we had a journal that we had to write a paragraph in every day. And I just started writing these stories in it. And then at some point, I just started writing about what I was seeing. So I had all these notebooks that were very detailed. I would write the date, exactly what time it was, and just what I was looking at. So I have I was sitting in a library and I was writing, 1:17 p.m. A woman in a polka dot shirt comes in and she returns 2 books. And I guess, that was the first time that I started documenting anything. And then my introduction to documentary was in 5th grade. My 5th grade teacher's son came into our class and talked about how he was making a documentary about the school art teacher. And I don't even know if I knew what a documentary was, but I just thought it was so cool that this person standing in front of me made a movie about another person that I know.
Yeah.
So I begged my parents to take me, and we went to the premiere in a public library in the next town over, and I was the only kid there. But I just loved it. It was so magical to see it. And I don't even know how much I understood, but it was just, I just couldn't get over this thing of this person made a movie and they're just sitting right here in front of me, and the movie's about someone I know.
That's really interesting. I think sometimes I think when you see something that gets created and you're like, hold on, this got made. I think too often we kind of, we lose some of that stuff we have as younger people, where we're like, this got made. Take taste out of it. The sheer fact that this got made, this person is right there in front of me. And I encounter that every now and again when, doing podcasts or even listening to podcasts. And I go back to, and it's a filmmaker, but I go back to a time where I was listening to a lot of Smodcast, Kevin Smith's podcast, and, just him reading through something from Gumtree. It's an equivalent of Craigslist. And ultimately, the conversation that they had about this thing later turned into the movie Tusk. And I was just like, this is the power of being able to have imagination and storytelling and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm always really interested when someone has that first experience or one of those early experiences that sticks out and, maybe lays some of that foundation of why am I curious about this? Why am I curious about this medium?
Yeah. And that just being, before that, movies were... before that, movies were they were on TV and there wasn't a connection to it. So having that kind of take it off the TV and make it so an actual experience that I was having was just so different.
Yeah. And I do a film series, a revival series. And the first 2 movies that I did were movies that were filmed here. And I remember distinctly, like age 8, going over there to Old Town Mall, watching them film part of Meteor Man. And just like, there's a guy in a costume and seeing stunt work, and just, big, just think of big kid eyes. Think of me as a child, but with big kid eyes, just, awe and wonder. And yeah, and being able to have, that thing that you just don't think is accessible right there in front of you. I'm like, I was there when they filmed that, and having that happen later when I was like maybe an adult, and still having that same sort of energy around it. It's like, wow, this is still really cool, actually. So was there a specific film or experience that hit you in a way that you're like, all right, enough of the shock and the surprise and awe and digging this. Like, I want to make something. I want to make this particular thing. And what kind of inspired you to enter the world of like film in the spot that you're in? Because you're doing a lot of the technical stuff, and still very much a filmmaker. But the technical stuff seems to be your forte, from what I was reading.
Yeah, I started the first time that I picked up a camera to do something was for like a history class project in 8th grade. And that it was about Vincent van Gogh, and I like filmed it with my best friend on Main Street in Ellicott City, so that it like looked like the olden times. And it was just so fun to do that. And after that, I kept, like, any time that there was an option to do a video project in high school, I was always picking that option. And then senior year, I took this internship class where like we got to leave school an hour early, and like you were paired with a mentor and an internship. And I really lucked out. I was interning for a MICA professor, Kirsten Hollander, and she was making this documentary, Anatomy of Wings, and she was following a group of 8 middle school girls in Baltimore until they graduate from high school. Mm-hmm. And I was the same age as the oldest girls at the time, and that was just the most like amazing experience to have had then, because I was going in, I was sitting in at her documentary class at MICA, and I was going and like, I was just like a camera assistant and editing assistant on that. And before that, I didn't even think that I could pursue film in college, but having that experience and like being in that setting was just it just felt so cool. It felt like everything that I wanted to do. And that project ended up being even more impactful because I kind of got to grow as a filmmaker with it, because I kept working on it for 10 years. And in the end, I was the assistant editor, but it started off with me being a senior in high school, just kind of wanting a taste of like, what does it mean to like make a film?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in high school having, I think I was like maybe sophomore year. And I just remember, because like I guess I'm decent at editing. I could just sit there and just, all right, trim, sync this up, trim. And just people like, can you help me with my project? I'm behind. And it's like, yeah, I can help you. And I was like, I chose a poor thing. I didn't want to, why did I do this? But now it's like from doing the, I guess the audio like side of things, I'm just equipped to just sit there and just painstakingly go through the process of editing in those instances where I do it. But it started off in like a film class at City College back in like 2002. Like, I'm spending way too much money doing this and too much time doing this. Yeah. So who are some of your favorite filmmakers? Because I think, at a point we develop like taste, and we have like people that I just like what they do. So tell me about some of your favorite filmmakers, and maybe something that they would have made for the folks that like, I don't know who the hell it is. Maybe I want to seek them out.
Yeah, I love the Coen brothers. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is my favorite movie, and I was in love with it from the first time I saw it. I a lot of the work that I do also is music related, like filming live music videos and like documenting music and musicians. So the way that the Coen brothers incorporate music, like music is such a huge part of the storytelling. I just love how, you know, the film comes out and it has a soundtrack, and then they also put together like a concert that has, like, they get all these people involved and create this whole experience around the music that's in the film. So they're definitely my favorites. And I also really love Les Blank, who is a documentary, or was a documentary filmmaker, who did these like portraits of musicians, and these like glimpses into these subcultures. And like, you know, he has a film highlighting like an Appalachian fiddler. He has one about polka dancing. He did a film about garlic, and he just like zeroes in on this very specific thing and just creates these like very quirky, honest glimpses into these people and into these things.
So, and I moved this question up since, you know, we're kind of talking about this music related sort of thing. So tell me about working on the documentary with Sam, I believe, with good old Sam Sessa. Tell me about that. Do Whatever You Want, all of the time, the Baltimore music scene. Tell me about that experience and how everything kind of came together there.
Yeah. So with the production company that I work for, Human Being, we had done a lot of work with TMD. So when Sam had this idea for the film, he reached out, and I was lucky to be the one to get to work on it. It just aligned so well with what I wanted to be doing and what I had been doing. And Sam has referred to it as his life's work, since he spent so much time like documenting the Baltimore music scene. So working on it with Sam especially was just such a wonderful experience, because he's so good at what he does, and he's so good at telling the story of the music scene. So we would kind of, I filmed not all of the interviews, but I filmed a good amount of them. And we were kind of filming these interviews and assembling the story, and then filming some more and working on the story. So our process was, you know, we'd film this interview, I'd get a transcript of it, send that to Sam, and we just had like a bunch of Google Docs that were like, here's the outline, here's another one, because the film features so many different photographers, and we just had all these, like, as Sam would have these photos coming in, he'd add them, and we'd get all excited, and like, or, you know, one of us would find a clip that we couldn't find from like 2007, and we'd like text each other like, oh my God, I found it. We get to add this in. But yeah, it was, and then it was really great too. With, you know, Sam has some narration in the film. So it was nice to kind of be able to, you know, adjust that as we needed, and to kind of, to be filming and putting it together. And then we knew like, all right, well, we really need someone to like fill in this gap. Like, can we do it with an interview? Can Sam do it with his narration? It was really a dream come true project to work on, because I grew up in Ellicott City, and, you know, in high school, I'd be listening to Beach House, to Future Islands and Dan Deacon. So it was just so cool to get to be the person to tell the story with Sam.
That's great. That's really cool. It's good having just different parts of our culture, parts of our just the artistic contributions being documented in that way. That's what I think it is missing a lot of the times, and I'm all for more of it. Let's just do it. Let's make it happen. So since we were kind of talking about process a little bit, let's talk about any of the projects that you've worked on, and maybe kind of like what your process looks like, maybe in like kind of milestones, or however you kind of like frame it, maybe in milestones, what have you. But also, what are some of the questions I think that you're seeking answers for within that process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I normally start off by just getting very excited or fixated on one small thing and diving into it. And I'll normally just kind of like think about it for a few months and see if it still is as interesting, which a lot of times it only gets more interesting. And yeah, just seeing like, is this something that I'd be willing to dedicate like possibly the next few years of my life to learning about and talking about and thinking about? Yeah. And then as far as questions go, I feel like when I'm coming up with an idea, I'm trying to think of, what exactly do I care about? Is it a cause? Is it a person who's the most interesting part of it? Is it a concept? And do other people care about this? Are there parts of this that can be universal? Are there parts of this that I could link to something greater? Yeah. And then also like, have I seen any films like this? What have other people made about this subject?
Yeah. Because I realized more and more we kind of go through having conversations and discourse and things around like just discussions around creativity, learn that more and more people are, and people get caught on a word, but more and more people are stealing, more and more people are sharing and being influenced in that way. So it is prudent to have a sense of, all right, who else has done something like this? What were they talking about? What was their angle? What can I maybe take from them and make it my own? What can, what do I think that they didn't do as well? What do I think that they missed? And things of that sort. And, I always talk about it with this kind of genre as it's blown up and gotten bigger and bigger. It's like, there's only so many angles one could have. It's like, oh, we do a barbershop podcast or we talk about news. It's like, news is the news. But how are you going to do something that's different? What podcasts were you listening to and things of that nature? And I would imagine the same thing comes to play. Like, as we were talking a little bit before we got started that, I'm dipping a toe maybe in documentary film. I don't know. And literally when I was coming up with the notes, because I think I do a lot of this kind of improvisational sort of stuff. And when it's something that feels kind of like rigid and contained, I'm like, all right, how can I marry how I go about things and accomplish things with the parameters that are there? So literally what I was thinking about, all right, just word vomit, everything you have in your mind for this particular project. And as you look at it, what's the tone? What is the setting? What's the structure? And what is that comparative to? And that way I can kind of see it and it feels a little bit more tangible versus it's just like a pipe dream. It's just something that's purely up here. At least I can get it down to paper or on a screen.
Yeah. For a film that is the first film that I directed, it's about Hazel Dickens, who's one of the first women to front a bluegrass band. And once I got really excited about this and then found out that someone had made a film about her, but it was 20 years earlier. So it was kind of cool to like have that as like a starting point, I guess, to think like, okay, well, 20 years is a long time. A lot has happened. She's died since then. Like what can I do that'll be very different that couldn't have been done with this film about her 20 years ago?
Right. And you see like even people who are going really, really like large level. Like I start thinking of like James Cameron, for instance. It's like, the technology hasn't caught up to what I want to do. So I'm just going to wait for 20 years. It's like, all right, hurry up with Avatar. Thanks. So filmmaking is laborious work. So in that, what's that main thing that keeps you motivated? Is it, I got to get this story out there. I want to really extend and test myself and test my limitations or how far I can go in a particular. What is that motivator for you?
I think sometimes it is just I want to get this out, which sometimes, with like nonfiction is, sometimes it is time sensitive or like, someone else is also interested in this. So like you want to get your idea out there. But also I think having like being a part of a community of filmmakers and having people who care about what you're doing and want to hear about it. And, people who also care about your opinion. Just having people around who you can have these conversations with and like people who will care about your film when no one else cares because no one else knows that you're even doing it. That's been motivating.
And what are some of the challenges or lessons you've learned in projects that you've worked on? Because I would imagine outside of there being hard work, there are things that you're like, all right, this was maybe the first project you worked on. It's like, damn, I am terrible at time management, or, it's like deadlines. And maybe when that next project comes up, you're like, I'm better at this now. So tell me about some of those like challenges that you've encountered or lessons that you've kind of taken in from projects you've worked on.
Yeah, a really big one with the Hazel Dickens film that I didn't even consider this until I did the Saul Zanton Innovation Fund lab. And I was so excited to like talk about my idea with all these mentors. And the first thing that everyone asked me was, well, like, do you know how much licensing her music will cost? And that hadn't even like crossed my mind. And everyone was like, no, this is the most important thing. Like, how can you make this film without it? So the journey of licensing music I know so much about it now. And it was the most stressful thing about this film it took me like, I think 3 years before I finally got it. And for a while I was trying to do it by myself. I was trying to like ask for some advice, but handle it on my own. Yeah. And in the end, I ended up working with someone who does music licensing, and that's her life. That's what she's an expert in. And like, that is what I needed. But the whole journey of like getting to her even was just so much. And before I started, I didn't even consider that would be like the biggest problem for the film.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I'm into music and so on. And then it's like, oh, I'm on my own guitar. Damn, that's something that I need to be mindful of that. And it's like, oh. And then now you're in a spot where you've learned so much about it that it's just like leaps and bounds, I would imagine, where you're like, music licensing, you just have to do this, fill out this form, you're good. I had to do that.
If you ever want to license music for a film, I can also talk you out of it very easily of how terrible of an experience it is. Yeah.
I for another podcast I was doing, because that fair use conversation is very weird, and it was like Spotify and SoundCloud. I remember it was a song that I was using that was on SoundCloud, and the licensing and who had the rights to it changed and all of that stuff. And eventually, I posted an episode of that podcast on YouTube, and I got the wild strike. I was like, oh no. So I reached out to the actual musician. I had to do some digging, and I was like, you're still alive. And I was like, can I use this? He's like, absolutely. I love that you're using my music on your podcast. And I was like, all right, so I don't know how to translate this, but literally this is an email directly from the guy. So, but just the digging from something very low level and inconsequential as like a weird podcast that doesn't exist anymore to actually a film coming out. And, that it's a lot of different parties when it comes to that sort of production, because there's so many different parts of a production.
Yeah. And it was really hard to find someone who could help me with it, because I guess so few people go down that path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's the last real question that I have for you. And it's kind of two parts. So I want to hit you with this part of it. Describe the films that you're interested in watching, and I'll come to the second part after you kind of say your piece on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like anything that surprises me. I really love films that, like, I love watching a documentary and then having the thought come up in my mind of like, whoa, like this counts as a documentary. Like you're really like mixing a lot of genres. You're like, there's like these scripted scenes and like, but it's still a documentary. Like I like anything that's surprising in that way.
Those hybrid formats. Mm-hmm. What sorts of projects would you like to see made in Baltimore in the next few years or what have you? So a little bit of a rebrand of the previous version of this question. But yeah, like whenever I talk to people, they talk about like, oh, well, The Wire. And that's pretty much it when it comes to anything. Even if it's like, yeah, The Wire made music too. It's like, no, we have more than that. It's not the only piece of pop culture contribution we have. So what sorts of like film projects do you want to see coming out of Baltimore in the next few years?
Yeah, I love TT the artist Dark City. I think that the way she just got so many people together. Like there's so many there's musicians, there's dancers, poetry, fashion. Like she was able to showcase so many people's talents and skills and really show this art scene. Like I love that so much, and I feel like I would love to see more of that, just this collaboration between so many different artists and creatives who all just share the same vision and goals and like want people to know about it.
That's great. That's great. We definitely need to have a little bit more of a lot more of our art scenes and all of the different pockets and niches. I feel like there's a whole conversation around the DIY scene. There's a deeper conversation around the club music scene, the dance scene, all of that stuff. And yeah, that was a very well done doc. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg for so many more stories that could be coming out. Like, there can be a 5-part series on the Why Not lot, if you will.
Yeah, and it's so cool to also have that be a project that you kind of, I heard about through Saul Zaentz and I knew about for a while, and like just being able to like witness it from the early stages to being on Netflix is just really, really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just waiting for Tales from the Crown. That would be amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
This is a Blue Room episode. So in the last moments here, I want to hit you with some rapid fire questions. Don't overthink them. That's my preface. Don't overthink them. Don't overthink them. They're all over the place. So I'm going to start off with a very simple one. iPhone or Samsung? What kind of phone you got?
iPhone.
Okay.
An old one, an 8.
Oh, wow. I'm on like 12, I think, or 13. Oof. I mean, I just upgraded, so, it's just, you'll come around. It's fine. Are you an optimist or a realist?
Both? Can both be an option?
Sure. Summer or winter? And so I'm thinking of extremes, right? But for work and for play, which one do you prefer for work and which one do you prefer for play?
I might summer for play, and then I think I could handle winter for work. I finally have like got the right clothes to not be cold outside.
Okay. I did my scenes were scrapped, but I did some scenes for We Own the City, and it was supposed to be like set in whenever the scene I was in was supposed to set in the fall. We filmed it during the summer, so we're like wearing hoodies. I'm like, look, are you going to digitally remove the sweat? Because I am sweating my ass off here. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like being very mindful of when you're doing your work and what's those settings like. Favorite number, and why is it your favorite number? Because I realize that people actually have a favorite number. It's like, some people are like, look, I'm playing a lottery. This is the number I play, or this number always pops up in my password. Do you have a favorite number, and what is it?
Yes, 3 is my favorite number. 9 is my second favorite number. It's 3 times. I don't know. And like early on in elementary school, I just really selected 3 and 9, and I've stuck with it since.
Some numerologist person is listening and losing their mind currently.
I know. They could probably tell me something about myself.
I remember I had a buddy who he was really into numerology, and he gave me one of his books. I have it in the studio right now. And I remember I was interested in like asking this young lady out, and he did the numerology on her. He's like, yeah, it's a lot of 7s in there, man. I don't know. Enter at your own risk. I was like, wow. I was like, why are you doing this? This is the last one I got for you. And this kind of, I think, brings everything home. What is that number one piece of advice you would share with a filmmaker going early in their career when they're seeking funding, when they're going into something like the Saul Zaentz Innovation Fund? Tell me that. What piece of advice you would want to share with a young filmmaker?
I think to reach out to people, whether it's someone who you think would be really like, oh, it'd be so cool to interview this person, or wow, this person's doing stuff I want to do. I think just reaching out to people, because it's pretty surprising who is very receptive to it and who responds and who is just down to help you or down to be interviewed by you.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Nice, succinct, and it makes sense. So shout out to you on that. And with that being said, I want to thank you for being on this podcast. Thank you so much. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check you out, some of your work, website, social media, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm honored to be part of this. And my website is my name, juliagolonka.com. And there's a little section there about do whatever you want all the time, and one about the film about Hazel Dickens. And yeah, I'm so happy to be part of this.
Thank you. So there you have it, folks. I want to thank again Julia Golonka for coming on to the podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there are filmmakers in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for them.